Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Chat with Chet. I'm joined today by Terry. And Terry, why don't you go ahead and give a quick introduction of yourself, and then we'll jump right in.
Perfect. Terry Poulias. I'm a federal solutions engineer with OPSWAT. Been with the company 2 years. Been doing this in some form or fashion in different industries since 2007. So.
Fantastic. We're big fans of OPSWAT and some of the great technology that has been coming out of there. So in your role today, and I've been asking a lot of the folks that I talk to this same question, you talk to a lot of different government agencies, and there's a lot of regulations that are coming out. What's your take on the regulations and what some of these agencies can do, and even not even the agencies, but also companies who do business with the government? What can they do to prepare for some of these regulations and changes that are being asked for?
Personally, one of the biggest thing is no matter what vendors you're using in different platforms for email, cybersecurity, things of that nature, keep in touch with everybody. Make sure that they're in the know of the different regulations that may be coming down the pipe. Unfortunately, some corporations don't move as fast for federal regulations, but they're a little bit more nimble when it comes to like HIPAA or other types of regulatory pieces. So it's always good to have that strong partnership, to open communications, make sure that they're moving down that right path. Because if they're not, then you may have to make an executive decision to find a new partner or a new avenue in order to address the different concerns that it's coming down the federal regulations way.
Yeah, well, good partnership, good communication, I think is essential. A lot has been, there's a lot of talk around CMMC, specifically around that type of regulation and the rule that's coming. And, from a data protection point of view, I'm interested in your thoughts on how you think organizations should be thinking about, protecting their data, both whether it's in transit or whether it's at rest or other things that they should do to be able to protect themselves and be CMMC compliant.
Oh, no, completely. Some of the biggest factors to protect all the data, like you said, data at rest or data at transit, some form of encryption that they'd be able to implement locally. I know DoD loves to use certificates. That's one of their biggest things they use a lot of in order to do encryption through email, digital signing of documents in order to protect that. Data at rest, whether it be the standard BitLocker, on your Windows hard drive on your laptops, to more sophisticated means for server platforms and such. So I think encryption is tremendous for that. And depending on the platforms, whether it be a single chain VPN, and I know some agencies do dual chain VPNs to really encrypt all their data in transit to prevent any sort of man-in-the-middle manipulation. So personally, I think encryption is the key thing. You need to be able to lock your doors, lock your windows, and make sure that everything is in a secure fashion instead of just leaving everything wild west, wide open, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. The DoD and the IC and some of these other organizations, and even I'll call it critical infrastructure organizations, there is a lot of disconnected type of networks, and there's still a lot of what I'm going to call sneaker netting of code or of data from one network to another via whether it be USB devices or some other device.
Mm-hmm.
Interested in your take on what organizations can do to help protect being attacked from that air gap type of a approach.
Oh yeah, air gap is great, but like you said, they still need to get something into that air gap to install whatever the servers are in that air gap environment or the workstations they're working on or applets that they're working with. One technique which I would recommend, and we do that quite well, we have our unidirectional data diode. So it is a one-way transactional drop-off of that data, that payload, whatever it is that you needed to sneaker net over traditionally. You can actually use it with our one-way data diode, and it's a one-way, no backflush. So it'll allow it just to get dropped into that area securely, and then there is no residual data coming backwards to prevent any sort of breach from the air gap system itself, allowing you to securely move the things over. It's full protocol break, fiber optic between the two data diodes, removes the actual headers and the footer, like everything of that, and only moves the content, and then completely starts a whole new transaction on the inside. So that's a great secure way to do that. And there are many diodes out there. I prefer ours, obviously. We have a few different flavors. One of our diodes even has Metadefender Core built in, so it can scan, analyze, AV, zero-day analysis of anything that's in that payload that you're moving across the domains.
Yeah, one of the unique things that you mentioned Metadefender Core and you talk about scanning. One of the sort of unique things that I've seen that I found actually very impressive is, a lot of organizations, when they scan, they have a single engine, right? They've got their vendor, whoever it might be, Windows Defender, right? Heaven forbid. That's probably the worst one of them all. But you get all these engines that are available, but most organizations have one. And they're scanning with one.
Correct.
But if we're talking about Metadefender Core, what does that look like from a scanning perspective?
Oh, goodness. So in Windows, a maximum package for AV currently is 32 engines. And in Linux, it is now 21. The sheer difference is they just develop more for Windows, so there's more availability for AV providers on the Windows side. But the efficacy rate is tremendous. Even at a base 8 package, efficacy rate is roughly 88% on whatever payloads that you're scanning. Max package at the 32 is 99 and change, because not every AV provider knows the same thing. Where they are around the world, where their local threat vectors are, their local state actors, everybody behaves differently, and they don't all know the same thing. I actually have a legitimate Trojan that I use for demonstration purposes, and 3 of my 8 AV engines don't know it exists for whatever reason. Just they don't have it documented. So if people say one is enough, no. And that one, when I show that, is definitive proof it's not, because it is a legitimate Trojan. And if you're only using that one AV that doesn't know it, then that malicious code is doing whatever it wants to do, and you have no idea that it's even infiltrated your system.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key things here is that historically, most organizations have a single engine, right? They have a single engine on their endpoint, and that's considered good enough, right? They can check the box, say, hey, do you have endpoint antivirus detection, right? They can check the box and say yes. But in reality, being able to augment that and being able to scan and have access to up to 32 on Windows or whatever
32 on Windows.
Yeah, that is significant. That
It
increases the protection much more. So instead of just one engine, you have access to the all 32.
Correct.
You go from that lower efficacy rate up to that higher. I think that really changes the security paradigm there.
It does. And one more thing to add with the AV perspective, because our providers are worldwide. They're in Europe, they're in Southeast Asia, Australia, Canada, US, UK, that sort of thing. So imagine an outbreak happens in Southeast Asia, and the local AV providers see something, they detect it, they document it, and they start updating it to the databases. Because of our SLA we have with them, we get the updates before the general public does. So technically, your servers in North America may be more up to date than the servers in Europe, because they don't know what's happening. They don't know what's propagating across. Yet because of our connection with our, say if it was in Southeast Asia, those AV providers would be updated first. We would get the updates first, and then your servers from OPSWAT would get the updates first. And therefore, it just makes it more of a secure approach to protect your whole environment.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite pieces of Metadefender Core.
Thank you.
So recently, last time we talked, the other, I'll call it hot topic, is SBOMs, right? Software bill of materials.
Yes.
I think we're seeing more and more government agencies starting to ask for that. We're seeing in contracts that are being let that requests for that to be included as part of the deliverable is coming. So interested in what you're seeing and why you think this is becoming such a big issue, and maybe how organizations should think about being able to generate their SBOMs.
So the software bill of materials is critical because there's so much collaboration and people using third-party libraries or open libraries, just open source things off the internet, and not knowing exactly what's in it. One of my customers didn't understand the SBOM off the bat, and I was trying to create an analogy for them, and I'll share it with you. It's how many times now do people look at this distinct ingredients on a can of soup? And if they don't like the yellow number 5, they know that's a bad thing. So like a software bill of materials, you're looking at all the ingredients that's sitting in that, and you realize, yellow number 5 is not good for me. I can't use this. So you move to the next piece. So having that same analogy and logic, I explained to them that it's the same with your software. If you don't know where that little bundle came from, or that little library is calling, or where country it may have come from, you could be opening up yourself to vulnerable aspects without even knowing it. And that clicked, and that really made them understand that logic, because everybody looks at the label of everything. So I'm like, it's the same. Why not look at the label of what in software you want to install within your systems and know exactly what are all the ingredients, and do you trust the ingredients, where they come from, what they're made from, and who programmed them and such. And that resonated, and they really understood that logic, because they want to make sure they know what they're consuming technically within their IT infrastructure.
Yeah, and you hit on something there. A lot of the SBOM solutions that I've seen in the market today are more about telling you, if you will, what your ingredient list. If we want to go back to the soup, it's like, hey, here's what's in here,
Right.
and they stop at that, right? And they'll just say, well, yep, here's your list of all the different libraries. Great. But you mentioned something about origin, country of origin.
Correct.
And why does that become important, and how does that help with your SBOMs and understanding that increase your security posture?
Sure, no, of course. And actually, a lot of quick thing you're mentioning too, when we do our SBOM, particularly on the Linux side, we don't just say, here's all the libraries. We can actually associate all the known CVEs to those libraries. So then you know immediately this Minimus package has 4 CVEs associated to it, or this other package has 3 or 5, whatever it may be. So we tell you exactly out of how many packages, which ones are malicious, or not malicious, which ones are vulnerable, and how many known CVEs are associated to it. So like the soup, yes, we give you the full list of ingredients, but we'll also tell you if it's spoiled, to keep with that same analogy. We can tell you exactly what's going on with that. Country of origin is critical, because most federal agencies, they don't want to deal with any software that comes from Russia or China or any other unfriendly nations. So we can do that now, particularly with Windows components, DLL files, MSI files, and executables. We're able to determine what's the country of origin it comes from, and we can program that into our server. As an example, my lab is designed for the 5 eyes. So I will only accept executables or Windows components from Canada, US, UK, New Zealand, and Australia. If it's from Germany, technically it's still a friendly nation. It rejects it, blocks it, and prevents it from even being processed. And you can cherry pick. You can pick, additional nations if you wish to block or allow as you see fit based on your use case and your mission. But it's critical, because even subcomponents of those executables, because we do unwrap the packages, and we could find that certain pieces may not, may be labeled from America, but some subcomponents might be coming from China or Belarus or Russia or any other of those nations, and we could tell you exactly that's going on with that, so that you know that exactly what's happening with your installer package to determine, is it trustworthy or not.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important. Like I said, that notion of origin, country of origin, source, where is it coming from, is something that a lot of the solutions today, I don't think, catch, right? And they miss that piece. So being able to include that, I think, helps an organization better understand their overall risk profile, and to be able to make more, I think, proactive decisions on how they want to mitigate that risk.
Correct.
So I think that's actually a pretty good thing to have. We didn't really talk about this when we were prepping for this, but one of the things that is definitely, it's how fast it's coming is insane, is the use of bad actors and their employment of AI to hack in a variety of different regions, whether it's they're using AI to craft better phishing emails or whatever it might be. So I'm interested in your take in what you're seeing of how can organizations be more proactive with their cyber defense strategies to be able to stay ahead of some of these threats that are becoming more and more sophisticated, and I think are just going to accelerate given the use of AI that's out there.
Oh, agreed. Some of the reports I've seen with AI, and some people actually using AI to generate malicious code. With most current state actors, there's a flare. There's a bit of a signature. You can tell, oh, this guy, it's a Russian known person or a Chinese known person. They have their own traits and their kind of distinct flavor and style of writing their code and doing such. But AI is like textbook flawless. there's no telltale sign as to where it could have originated from. So an AI generated version would be a needle in a haystack to determine where it may have originated from, because again, there is no telltale flair or signature of the programmer behind it. But when it comes to industries to protect against this, even like you said, your email, I believe, last study I saw, I think over 80% of any corporate breach is coming through email, user error. Hey, this is an email from Chet. I know Chet. I'm going to click on the link from Chet. Then all of a sudden something wrong happens. We do have a system where we can actually analyze your emails inbound and out. We can look at the attachments for viruses, zero-day analysis, everything. And we even have a way to render the URLs virtually in our server to determine, is it really going to the site that it's depicted? We look at copyright logos and symbols to determine, is it really the IRS website, or is it really Bank of America, or is it really whatever? And we can come back and say, no, based on our results, this is actually a malicious phishing attack to make you go somewhere else. And we can break the link and prevent that click, which is typically a user error of just, hey, I'm going to go to the link, and usually causes the issues. So definitely keeping up to speed with all types of infiltration points. Email is one. USB thumb drives, those free thumb drives you get from trade shows, other great ways of getting stuff into your system that you shouldn't. So there's always be layers approach. It's an older saying, but I like it. Belt and suspenders make sense, and especially in the cyber world, it does entirely make sense, because you need to have multiple layers of protection.
Absolutely, and it reminds me, that's a good point. We'll have to tell our marketing people, make sure that they don't give out USB drives at trade shows. So.
We were at a show once, and one agency was handing out some drives, and we just randomly asked one person to plug it into our kiosk to analyze it, and the boot sector had some malicious code in it.
Yeah, nice. Never want to do that. That would be bad. So, I do want to go back. The one I just I had some notes, and I forgot to bring it up when we were talking about SBOMs. I think if an organization has their SBOM, and if we're in this process of continually scanning, continually updating, how does having the SBOM, the continual scanning, help an organization, when it comes to the identification of threats or potential new threats that happen to pop up?
Well, of course. So one of the great things with our solution is, before you were to attempt to install anything, run the payload through our tool to determine, are there any CVEs, or is there any kind of malicious code hidden inside of it that we may not have been seen originally. And that's at one time and place. So, example right now, it's 3:49 p.m. on the 31st. The definitions only know what they know today. We have a solution that if you have to keep this binaries or keep the software or get new versions, we could do periodic rescanning on top of it. So in a week, in 2 weeks, in 10 weeks, all the definitions change. They evolve naturally. And then all of a sudden I come back and say, what we didn't know on the 31st, we know a lot more now. And we just found that there's new lines of CVEs or new lines of malicious code that we just weren't aware of on the original ingestion, because they only knew what they knew that day. And everything evolves so quickly. That's a great way to really do a proactive health approach of your data, of your applications, of your everything, to know exactly what's their status.
Yeah. And that's, I think, going to be critical going forward, especially coupling the continual scanning with the SBOMs, so that when a new zero-day, something comes out, organizations will know exactly where the vulnerability points lie. They'll know where they need to go take proactive action, to determine whatever that is, whatever remediation needs to be to protect themselves. But they should know immediately, because they should know, hey, I've got these libraries on this system, and this is where that system's, this is deployed there.
Correct.
So I think that becomes critical in helping them rapidly, mitigate these evolving risks.
Correct. And with most industries right now, the biggest, learning curve, nobody wants to put the effort through to put in the time and money and effort to stand up the cyber infrastructure like it should until something goes wrong. Then all of a sudden they're like, yep, okay, throw everything at it in the kitchen sink. We have to fix it, yesterday. Unfortunately, that's usually what happens. The scare needs to happen in order for them to make them fully aware of it. Otherwise, like you said, we have one AV, we're good. Or, okay, we have a little bit of a scanner over here. Okay, we're good. something usually needs to break, and that usually really puts them laser focused then to correct it all and make all the amendments that they need to through their infrastructure.
Agreed. So Terry, as we wrap up here, I'm just curious if in terms of best practices or things that you are seeing that you would encourage government agencies or these organizations who are working with the government, what is your recommendations to them, sort of your words of wisdom that you would give these organizations to help them, improve their security posture going forward?
You know what? One of the best advice I can give, and it just draws on a past life when I used to be a civil servant, create that partnership. Be there for them, not just for the sale, not just for the upgrade to the next product. Be their partner. Not necessarily sell them something, but talk to them about new trends or new things that are happening or new threats that are being detected. What's your plan? Don't feed them something or don't try and push something, but just ask them, what's your plan? If they don't have a plan, then that partnership builds right there, and that trust builds right there, where they can rely on you and work on different types of pieces there. That's one big factor, because that level of trust and that commitment between the two, it's teamwork at that point, and it's not necessarily a sale call per se. As for the federal industries, make sure you're up to date. Don't always go for the cheapest, easiest, fastest thing that's up there. Sometimes you may need to spend a little bit more, and that's okay, but know what you're doing. Compare everything properly. Do a proper bid and look at all the different avenues that are available and look at what's best. And that gives you the most robust build, that has the best updates, the best rapport, the best whatever. And then that way you're ensuring yourself in a better posture just in case something happens.
Right. Good advice. All good advice.
Thank you.
Terry, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with Chet today, and we appreciate all you folks who have tuned in. And until next time, we hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.